Um, we're doing good on time. Um, our next chair uh, is Deborah Puak. I think I saw her come in. Are you ready to begin the next session?
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you so
Uh,
much for.
oh, it's a pleasure to be here. All of the speakers and their topics sound very interesting. I'm so excited to learn more. Um, Now we will begin with Laurentiu Staicu on reasoning about emotions in PC. He is a professor at the Faculty of Philosophy of the University of Bucharest, where he teaches metaphysics, philosophy of biology, ethics of science, and philosophical counseling on theory and practice. Beyond his role as an academic, Laurentiu Staicu extends his expertise to the practical realm as a philosophical counselor, maintaining a private practice in Bucharest, Romania. And whenever you are ready, um, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Deborah, and good morning, everybody. Good afternoon or good evening, if that's the case. Now, as the title of my presentation suggests, today I will discuss about how we approach emotions in philosophical counseling. And I'm well aware this subject may sound a little bit surprising, given that philosophical counseling has often been characterized as a practice that prioritize rational thought, focusing primarily on the examination of beliefs, reasoning, and their consequences. A long-standing preconception suggests that philosophical counseling should concern itself solely with thought processes, setting emotions somehow aside as a separate domain, best addressed by psychology or psychotherapy. However, today I want to challenge a little bit this assumption and to explore why emotions are not just relevant but integral to philosophical counseling. Now, in this regard, my main thesis is that philosophical counseling, and indeed any form of counseling or therapy, should not operate under the illusion that thoughts and emotions are entirely distinct entities. This dualistic approach, which assumes a clear distinction between rational thought and emotional experience, overlooks the fundamental unity of human existence. Human beings, after all, are not fragmented beings composed of um, isolated components, but rather integrated monolithic entities in which body, mind, and emotions are deeply interconnected. And therefore, to exclude, to put aside emotions from philosophical inquiry would be, in a way, to engage in an incomplete and even superficial examination of the self, of the person. So, by reasoning about emotions, philosophical counseling can provide a structured framework for clients to examine and to navigate their emotional experiences through rational inquiry. This approach could foster self awareness, coherence, and ultimately, I think, a good alignment between emotions and philosophical commitment that we all have. Now, I'm going to say a few words about emotions from a cognitive perspective, emotions seen as a cognitive phenomenon. While traditional some of the traditional therapeutic approaches, such as, for example, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, or psychoanalysis even, they often focus on emotional expression and regulation. Philosophical counseling distinguishes itself by emphasizing the cognitive and existential dimensions of emotions. Emotions, from a philosophical perspective, are not just fleeting, raw sensations. They are deeply intertwined with our beliefs, with our values, and with our overall worldview. They are shaped by how we interpret our experiences, by what we hold to be important, and the way we understand ourselves in relation to the world. For example, from a philosophical, or to be more specific, from an existentialist perspective, anxiety is often viewed not simply as an unpleasant feeling to be somehow eradicated, but as a meaningful response to the weight of personal freedom and responsibility. It suggests that our fear or unease often arises from confronting life's uncertainties, our own mortality, or the pressure of making authentic choices. And similarly, Stoic philosophy, which was invoked in the previous presentations, Stoic philosophy does not see emotional distress as something that happens to us somehow passively, but rather as a consequence of how we think and what we prioritize. From a Stoic perspective, much of human suffering stems from misplaced value judgments, desiring things which are beyond our control, fearing outcomes that are not harmful, or even attaching too much importance to external circumstances. By shifting our perspective and aligning our values more wisely, we can cultivate a sense of inner stability rather than being ruled by emotional turmoil. These philosophical perspectives, and many others, of course, they underscore that, in a way, emotions are not irrational disruptions to be suppressed, but they are meaningful indicators of how we engage with the world, providing valuable insights for philosophical inquiry and personal growth. So we could say that philosophical counseling can serve as a bridge between thought and emotion, helping individuals, helping our clients to explore how their emotional responses stem from underlying assumptions and perspectives. And this form of inquiry can empower individuals to better understand their emotions and um, fostering somehow a deeper sense of personal coherence and control. Now, let me say a few words about the benefits, what I believe are the benefits of analyzing emotions in philosophical counseling. I believe that a systematic analysis of a systematic approach to emotions in philosophical practice has numerous benefits, but I will briefly highlight only three key areas, at least key areas from my point of view. Decision making is the first one, ethical reflection, and what I already mentioned before, personal growth. I strongly believe that a philosophical approach to emotions in philosophical counseling has a lot of benefits in these three key areas. The first one, decision making. Emotions, I guess, significantly impact decision making, as we all know, often in ways we may not immediately recognize. Uh, So philosophical counseling can help individuals to scrutinize their emotional reactions, uncovering hidden biases or even unconscious influences that shape their choices, their everyday choices. By subjecting emotions to rational inquiry, clients can develop a more, let's say, balanced and thoughtful approach to decision making. For instance, the fear of failure may stem from some deep-seated perfectionist beliefs. Understanding this connection, I guess, allows for a more deliberate and reasoned evaluation of and opportunities. The second area is that of ethical reflection. Moral and even ethical dilemmas are often charged with intense emotions, guilt, anger, compassion, or even existential dread. Philosophical counseling allows individuals to analyze all these emotions in relation to their ethical frameworks. For example, someone struggling with, let's say, moral guilt may explore its roots in religious or cultural conditioning, allowing, therefore, for a more reflective and intentional moral stance. Examining emotions philosophically does not dismiss them, but contextualizes them, helping individuals act alignment with their values rather than being driven solely by unexamined emotional impulses. And the third area, which is, I think, very important in this regard, is personal growth. Now, I guess in a key aim of philosophical counseling is to promote self-awareness and personal development. Emotional experiences, when reflected upon philosophically, become valuable sources of insight. A person experiencing persistent frustration, for example, may be encouraged to explore whether their expectations are unrealistic or whether their frustration signals a deeper existential misalignment. By systematically engaging with emotions through philosophical dialogue, clients can develop a richer, a more integrated sense of self, which is, of course, very useful and very important for all of us. Now, to sum it up, or as a conclusion, um, I believe that to ignore emotions in philosophical counseling is, in a way, to ignore a fundamental aspect of human existence. Thoughts and emotions are not separate entities, but they are deeply interwoven aspects of our being. So, therefore, by engaging with emotions through rational inquiry, philosophical counseling can foster self-awareness and ethical reflection and empowered decision making. It allows you to align their emotions with their philosophical commitments and therefore to promote a life of coherence and meaning. I firmly believe we must move beyond this um, somehow outdated notion that emotions lie outside the scope of philosophical inquiry. Instead, we should fully embrace, I would say, the complexity of human experience, integrating emotional reflection into our philosophical practice in a constant and systematic way. By doing so, I guess we could only, of course, enrich the counseling practice, the counseling process, but we could also affirm and even enhance philosophy's relevance to the full spectrum of human life. But At the same time, I guess we must continue exploring this integration through specific and through focused research. Looking ahead, I see at least three areas where I think further inquiry could prove very valuable, at least from my point of view as a practitioner. The first one regards the integration of philosophical counseling with psychological therapies, exploring how philosophical counseling can complement traditional psychological approaches and therefore creating a more holistic framework for emotional well-being. The second one regards what I usually call cross-cultural perspectives on emotions and reasoning, investigating how different cultural traditions conceptualize and integrate emotions into philosophical thought, enriching the global practice of philosophical counseling. I guess it could be very valuable in the near future for us as philosophical counselors and for counseling in general. And the third area of research, which I think could prove very important in the future, regards the long-term effects of philosophical counseling on emotional well-being. I guess in this area, we should start some empirical studies, conducting some empirical studies to assess how engaging with emotions through philosophical dialogue impacts personal development, resilience, and overall mental health. What are the consequences of this process, of this practice, philosophical counseling? And of course, I guess there are many others, many other areas which benefit from research, but I only these three because I don't have much time. That's I think I managed to have a presentation so far. Thank you for your time, and of course, welcome your questions. Topic.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We can now begin with the question and answer portion of the session. If you have any questions, please just unmute your mic.
I guess mine is more of a comment. I enjoyed what you said and agree, but it seems to me that philosophical counseling already does take very seriously the emotions, and even with the equations, if you will, and the conditional, we can analyze individual struggles in terms of their faulty reasoning, such as, oh, when this person says this, then I react with anger. So that's a descriptive claim, and we can show them that that is not conducive to their well-being. Just a comment that I think emotions play a large part in the practice already, but still we can further develop that. And I couldn't help but wonder too if you've seen my article, something I wrote for the International Journal of Philosophy and Practice, or Philosophical Practice, because so many of the things that you mentioned are part of that theory and model of well-being, which is utilized in my practice. So it's right now it's the EARN theory, EARN. So there's ease or lack thereof, including emotional ease, physical ease, and ease in our networks. The A is authenticity. which is actually a really loaded term because it's objective authenticity that brings in not only the subjective factors, but objective factors like ethics and information. So ease, including that emotional part you're talking about, authenticity, resilience, and the network. So tomorrow I'll be presenting on an updated version of that because I've added a few things. But I think that I just want to recommend that initial article to you because it really speaks to a lot of what you've shared with what you want to see in terms of philosophical counseling. And those emotions, again, fit right in to the ease part and also the authenticity. And those factors all constrain one another. So when we can't be as authentic as we'd like to be, for whatever reasons, whether it's originating from within, like procrastination or fear, or from public policy and staunch capitalism that keeps us, especially Americans, in debt, then we can't, anger can arise. Like, oh, I want to do this, but I have all this debt now. So that authenticity, so the network, the political network, when that's not authentic in terms of what human beings need to flourish, it affects the individual's authenticity, which affects the emotional condition as well, generally or at a given time. But yes, also this book, which is going to be my presentation too, Character Strengths and Virtues. It's full of psychological studies, especially positive psychology, and a lot of the character strengths and virtues are described in terms of emotions. So yeah, there's still a lot of good work to be done. I wish that, as I'm sure all of you would agree, wish that our credentials as philosophers who have this training in philosophical counseling too, wish our credentials were taken more seriously so that we can provide more therapy that's so needed. And we can, but there's the issue with insurance and all the red tape everywhere that further obstructs our authenticity in a way, and more obstacles in our networks. But yes, thanks.
For your, I didn't have the chance to read your paper. I look for it. But is the emotion, our practice, philosophical. I'm aware how we are in other countries, but here there are based emotions are their term. We don't have to discuss emotions. Emotions are separate parts. As a philosopher, as to change the hats, and it's an unfortunate habit. The modern philosopher Descartes. Ones are not entities with two parts.
I'm sorry to Laurentiu, to cut you off. It seems your mic might not be totally in sync.
Oh.
I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. I don't know if anyone else is. If you could just repeat what you said, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, let me start. Just a second. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay.
I think, to address the elephant in the room, the foundation of the National Philosophical Counseling Association is your thesis. And I think you did a very good job, defending it. Essentially, it's the integration of philosophical concepts with psychotherapy. And that was the basis for the foundation of the organization. And it's also the basis of logic-based therapy, as I think you know. And so there has been, considerable work, including empirical studies, because logic-based therapy has been, there has been a randomized controlled study, and there's been individual studies, single system studies, and of course, case studies, that show that philosophical ideas can indeed, advance emotional well-being. And so that's an important area. And I think you could very well, your talk could very well be a poster child for that, defense. So I think that what you did was get to the core of something very important, in philosophical practice, something that has, and I agree with you, has been ignored, in certain quarters of philosophical practice, but needs, more emphasis, I think, going forward.
Yeah, at least as I said, at least here in Romania, I still think there are some prejudices against this integration of emotions into philosophical inquiry. So yeah, there is a lot of work ahead of us, so to speak. And I'm glad that you agree with me on that issue. Thank you very much, Elliot.
I had a question about your cross cultural perspectives and how that could be integrated better. Can you speak a little bit more on that? And I guess maybe what cross cultural perspectives
Yeah.
also mean to you.
Thank you, Deborah, for your question. Well, I guess the relationship between emotions and reason and thought is seen differently from different cultural perspectives. So I think it's important to discuss about those things. In the previous presentations, I saw that there are very interesting and very original points of view regarding the importance of philosophy and the relationship between philosophy and well-being. So cultural perspectives might be very different regarding the relationship between emotions and reason and thoughts. So I guess we should take that into account. Otherwise, we would be using some very narrow perspective, Western perspective, let's say, and that would be unfortunate. So yeah, I think it could prove valuable to get more insight into different cultural perspectives on this relationship between emotions and reason. This is how I see it.
I find the integration of how you brought up emotion and reasoning to be very powerful, because sometimes with CBT, we see positive results up until the end of the study. And then once the studies are done, people seem to repeat certain patterns again because sometimes we don't add the emotion or the philosophy behind it a little bit. I guess deeper looking at like what could be missing as well. So I appreciate your point of view as well.
Well, we are there is an old philosophical saying, humans are rational creatures, rational beings. I guess we could say in the same time, but that humans are emotional beings. And we philosophers, we used to ignore this part, emotions, until historically, very recently. You don't find a philosopher like Descartes, for example, discuss about emotions in a systematic way, or Kant or any other modern philosopher or contemporary philosophers. So I guess we should strive out in the research part of our practice. We should strive at a more integrated approach to discuss, in short, more about emotions. They are important. So this importance should be seen in our practice, in our, I say, even writings, right, in our papers, as Marta was mentioning previously. Yeah.
I like this topic on emotion and reasoning, and I was thinking about how often in philosophy I tend to hear about emotions as indications of faulty reasoning. That there's a positive aspect of emotions, which mostly in therapy and we address. They are informative about the impact that the world has on the individual or on the human subject who experiences the emotion, and they tell us what's at stake for that individual. For example, it's
Right.
perfectly normal to feel scared or angry when you are being bullied. So the question arises, which or how can philosophical practice help us to distinguish which of our experienced emotions are there to indicate something that's worth our attention, or and which are emotions that are there only to help us suppress the real emotions by, I don't know, for example, culturally, here or maybe all over the world, men usually get angry. It's more manly. They don't cry so much. But women, when they're angry, they're more likely to cry, although they're angry and they look sad. So there are cover emotions happening. So we would need some deconfusion about what we feel, and then to see the connection with the aspects of reality that those emotions show. And I think this is one of the most important forms of help that philosophical consultations can can give us, the questions that help us get some clarity around what is this emotion that I'm experiencing. Otherwise, we mostly dislike a lot of the emotions and we want to get rid of them and say, well, I'm just trying to be stoic, but that's running away really from maybe something important. So how do you think about that, Laurentiu?
Thank you, Anka. Yes, I totally agree with you. I guess the first step would be uh, to help our clients to accept that they have those emotions. For example, I have a lot of difficulties in my practice with my, let's say, male clients to help them to accept their emotions. They tend to ignore them. They tend to minimalize them. They tend to even judge them as being something faulty, some defects of character. It is not a good thing to have emotions. You are a man, which is actually quite silly if you think about it. We are biologically programmed to react in an emotional way to the circumstances of our lives. So we cannot ignore emotions. So I think that's the first step to make them to help them to accept that we all have emotions. Having them is something normal, and then to help them to discuss openly and to reason about their emotions. You know, because we have a lot of negative emotions, we can discuss about them. And from my practice, the simple fact of discussing about them is quite useful. Is very useful for the client, and that is a very difficult step sometimes. At least from my point of view, from my in my experience. I don't know how you think about that. So
And
yeah,
and
sorry.
finding some ethical approach to what to do. For example, if I'm being bullied at school, what do I do? Do I hit back? Do I tell on them? how do I act about it in an ethical sense? So can philosophy help me make choices in that direction? Because in psychology or in psychotherapy, there's a lot about, well, you're free to do what you want, and let's see the outcome. It's really very experimental. And one of the reasons I was looking into philosophy was to actually find some different kinds of answers to see which ones I might resonate with based on what's possible here in my area or what fits with my values. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
ethics.
So ethics, I guess, is very important in practice, and that is also very difficult to discuss with clients in practice, because some of them are not aware that we are ethically conditioned by nurture and by education. They think that things are in a certain way, so we cannot change them. So in that situation that you mentioned, if I'm being bullied, I should first of all discuss about what's wrong with being bullied, why being bullied is unethical. And from that, we'll get we could get to a discussion about what to do, about the actions that we can approach, the measures that we should take. And that is very, from my experience, very therapeutic for our clients, because they won't feel helpless. They won't feel that, I'm just a guy, I'm just an individual in the world. The things are as they are, and we cannot change them. And that's life, being bullied is a part of life. No, being bullied is something bad. And we can discuss that from this point of view, which is, of course, an ethical point of view. We cannot live with each other's in communities if we don't have an ethical stance. It's unconceivable. We should accept that. That's part of being human, right? And we need to be able to openly discuss that. Thank you, Anka. Thank you very much for
You
your
as well.
questions and comments.
I have a simple question, if I may. How do you deal with anxiety? I have a terrible time with anxiety at times. How does your viewpoint, how does anxiety fit into your viewpoint?
Anxiety. Well, I have a lot of clients with anxiety, and in my experience, they start to feel better if we discuss openly, as I said before, about that, and then if we start to make some connections. We are not alone in that. Anxiety is a part of human condition. If you define it like that, it doesn't seem so frightening. A lot of my clients come to me with this preconceived idea that anxiety in general is something bad. It's something that isolates you. People are not usually anxious. And I guess that's wrong. If you interpret anxiety as being, preoccupied by something in a certain way, very deeply, well, it should be something that we all do, at least from time to time, right? We should all be sometimes anxious about something. The problem is when we cannot get away from that, when we cannot leave that behind. We cannot live with, for example, being always preoccupied by death and being constantly anxious about the possibility of dying. That's not something normal. But thinking about that from time to time and getting anxious about the possibility of dying, I guess that's healthy. And from that point of view stems a lot of possibilities, of opportunities in practice. But yeah, we are nowadays very preoccupied by anxiety, and it has a lot of causes. For example, in my practice, again, a lot of clients are anxious because they are somehow channeled, they are strongly connected to social platforms, to Facebook, for example, and they get their information about the world from that platform, that social media platform, and they are becoming very anxious because they are very insecure. Everything is changing from 1 hour to another. It's very problematic. But if they disconnect, the miracle happens. You know, many of them are becoming less anxious. Okay, that's okay. So yeah. Well, to sum it up, I don't have a straight answer to your question. So anxiety has many faces, and I guess we should take that into account when we approach it. But thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
I would like to add a few words about anxiety. I'm a dentist, so all my patients, or most of my patients, come with fear to dentist, and I know that the source of the fear, in most cases, it's not me. It's just an organic way of approaching the session at the doctor. And these fears sometimes even have like a visceral indicator, the viscosity of the saliva. So I can, even when the patient says that he's not afraid, I can see from the micro expressions or from the viscosity of the saliva that or the abundance of the saliva, that there is something going on in the subconscious level. So in these cases, most of the time, I'm trying to dilute this fear of a dentist, I'm trying to find out the source. But the most fascinating cases are the kids who come with a learned or I don't know, inherited fear of dentist, and then the most spectacular results I have with them, because when I introduce myself and when I introduce the session as a game, as a something that it's natural, then they are really are taking it as a part of the game, and they are love coming back to the dentist. So I think it's very important, once we notice the anxiety or to investigate it, the source of it, and to diffuse it, to talk about it, to listen how the fear came into the system. My fascination for philosophy is that I discovered that the psychosomatic part, the psycho part of the somatization, actually it has a philosophical aspect of it. So whether we admit it or not, everybody lives by a personal philosophy, and that philosophy sometimes have some flaws. And in certain scenarios where, let's say, the doctors who are working with patients, if we are working with, I would like to make a reference to the Martin Buber's IDAO framework. If we are talking to the object, and we are degrading the patient to the Tao as an object, then they sense it. If we are talking to them as a subject, then it's already better. And if we are managing to talk to them, to the unconditioned part of the core part of their soul, to upgrade them, and we be the I and he the Tao, or like we would talk to an angel or a god, then actually the deconditioning part of the or the understanding, it goes much deeper into the system, and we can diffuse the philosophical problem much more efficiently. At least this is my experience in the anxiety and regarding to the fear. And as I said, in most of the time, it's not related to me as a person. It's in the general. It's a learned, heard somewhere, and when the patient has an encounter with a genuine professional approach, who is not taking him as an object, but as at least as a subject, then the experience is much better.
I think you're right. And I think it has a lot to do with trust too. When you show unconditional positive regard, for patients, then patients feel more comfortable with you. They're more likely to trust you. And when they trust you, they're less likely to catastrophize about the possibilities that you might harm them. And so I thought your reference to Buber's I thou, treating them as thous and not as its, makes a lot of sense, and from a professional perspective. And it's there, I think, where you rightly point out that a philosophical approach to your patients and understanding, that everybody does have, philosophies, as you said, and some of them are misconceived, and having trust, can help to alleviate some of the misconceptions, that clients, patients might have. So I thought that was very good. I appreciated that.
We have
And I
2
love
minutes left
that.
before we have to turn to our next speaker. So if you have any last minute thoughts,